Thank you. Welcome. So I'm going to just get started and not care about how this works. So first things first. From now on, what I'm going to be doing is making these videos unlisted as soon as I'm finished. Maybe give it a couple hours after it's finished. They'll go unlisted, and then I'll put them behind a money button paywall. And then I'll also upload the video to streamanity.com. So I'll pull that up for anybody that doesn't know, but that is what used to be called Keyport TV. So pretty soon they'll let you actually do live streams, which is what I will switch over to eventually. But the goal here is the only people that will be able to watch these videos are people that have BSV. So that's the way this is going to work from now on. And there's a reason for that, because I think that information is there's value associated with the information, and I'm going to give you information in this video that is valuable. Even if it'll cost you 1 cent to watch this video to get the unlisted link, but streamanity.com is also how you can watch it as well. So in the meantime, we will keep it on YouTube live until Streamanity gives me the option to stream live on their platform. Okay, so we are going to dive right in. I guess I'll address just thanks for bearing with us on this break. I actually wanted to spend this time talking about something much more educational, but I think this is going to be needed regardless. We used to do news, so this is going to be kind of a news show, but it's also going to be my own opinion on a lot of things. So that's how this is going to work. So first things first, we've titled the stream hashtag delist BSV. So if you don't know, Bitcoin SV has been delisted from Kraken, however you pronounce that, which is an exchange run by Jesse Powell. Roger Ver has a large holding in Kraken. It's been delisted from Binance, which CZ runs that one. And it's also been delisted from Shapeshift.com. So Shapeshift, if you don't know all these services, you might if you're in the cryptocurrency world. Really, all of these services are pretty pointless from a fiat to Bitcoin standpoint. And I'll also mention, so I just found this out. So if you go to okcoin.com and you are in the U.S., so they just announced Float SV, but okcoin.com actually has US dollar to BSV. So did not know that. So if you need to do that, that's good. So, but anyway, all these exchanges delisted Bitcoin SV. It's as if the stream's a little blurry. All right, well, can't do anything about that for now. Hopefully it gets better. So with all that said, let me see if I can actually turn that up before I keep going. I don't want to do anything that's going to cause issues, so you'll have to deal with it. Sorry. All right. So all these exchanges delisted Bitcoin SV, and that's how it works. So is that a problem? So everyone's now that the world's fallen out from under them, and they said, Bitcoin and beyond, you guys need to make a video. This is crazy. The world's ending. But all of that really kind of came from, some people really came from gamblers. It came from gamblers, and also came from people outside of Bitcoin SV saying that the coin was dead. Just because of some shitcoin exchanges decided to delist Bitcoin SV. So there's a few things wrong with that line of thinking. So number one, Binance, aside from the allegations of all fake volume and all that kind of stuff, they really serve no purpose but to go from one cryptocurrency to another cryptocurrency. So a coin that can do everything and just have one coin kind of threatens their entire business model. Shapeshift.com, the entire business model is to be able to exchange between cryptocurrencies, right? Again, that model is threatened by one Bitcoin, okay? Volume seems low. I just turned it up. I'm sorry. All right. It's been a while. So, going to keep going here. Kraken, I think Kraken, there's probably some personal things going on there, but the reasoning given for delisting Bitcoin SV, for Kraken, it was a Twitter poll. So they polled people on Twitter asking whether Bitcoin SV should be delisted. So that's a thing. That's how things work now, apparently. Let's see. I'm on CZ Binance's Twitter feed, and it's just shitcoin after shitcoin. But I'm trying to find his actual tweet that was around delisting. It was based on this guy, Peter McCormick. So here you go. So Kraken, so Eric Voorhees joins Binance, ships Shapeshift, and delisting Bitcoin SV. The people have spoken, according to Kraken Exchange, on their Twitter poll. The people have spoken to delist Bitcoin SV. So you can see Peter McCormick. So all of them kind of cited Peter McCormick's lawsuit, which we're going to get to, as for why they delisted Bitcoin SV. Right. So we're gonna get to that, but I want to mention yesterday the Bitcoin SV Node team published this article, and it talks about what's coming for Bitcoin SV. In July of 2019, Bitcoin SV is going to increase the maximum block size to 2 gigabytes. And this is sooner than we expected. So, well, the large block, quote unquote, community decided we're going to create Bitcoin Cash in, what was that, 2017? They talked about radically scaling. And if you remember correctly, in the August 2018 fork of Bitcoin Cash, there's a lot of discussion as to whether Bitcoin SV or whether Bitcoin could handle blocks bigger than 32 megs and all that kind of stuff. So much work has been done in the SV node implementation that they feel comfortable raising the cap to 2 gigabytes. Now, are we going to have 2 gigabyte blocks immediately? No. But that's okay. It means that the cap will be large enough where other improvements can be made to eventually get us to 2 gigabytes. Now, there's a whole host of other things, but what this really also gets to returning to Genesis. And again, I'm not going to talk too much about this, unfortunately. There's a lot of other stuff we will talk about moving forward, but I want to get to another point in this episode here. Is returning the Bitcoin to Genesis. So sunsetting P2SH, sunsetting op check lock time verify, op check sequence verify, restoration of the original op return functionality, limited support for the original SIG hash algorithm to ensure any legacy transaction that had been kept offline becomes valid on BSV again. Huh. So this one really went under the radar. I didn't hear anyone really talk about this except in a few places. Huh. I wonder why you would need support for the original SIG hash algorithm to ensure that any legacy transactions that have been kept offline become valid on BSV again. I wonder who would be interested in a transaction like that. And then removing all extraneous limits on script sizes, transaction sizes, etc. And then there's all these other improvements outside of consensus. Okay. Now, nice thing, actually, Steve Shatters, we're going to get Steve Shatters back on this show at some point soon. So that's pretty great. So we can talk about all this other stuff. But I want to mention that Bitcoin SV is fulfilling Satoshi's original words of uncapping Bitcoin, and it's returning it to the original state of Bitcoin. So why is Bitcoin SV such a threat? Why would we have to delist BSV? Is it really because of a lawsuit against Peter McCormick, the podcaster? And we can look at how Peter McCormick is treating this lawsuit. Okay. I mean, this guy's a child. This is the most remarkable part. This guy's a child. And yet this is the guy everyone's going to bat for. This is because someone is suing him for libel. We're all going to delist BSV. Does that make sense to you guys? Because it doesn't make much sense to me. Huh. So I'm going to tell you a story. I think I got through everything I needed to get through so far. So there's a story called the Odyssey. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of that. I'm pretty sure everyone had to read it here in the U.S. at least. Not sure about abroad. So in the Odyssey, there's a main character called Odysseus, and he goes on an adventure. It's a very long story, but he goes on an adventure after battling. He's in battles, and then he it's a long story. He goes on an odyssey all over the world, but he leaves his wife Penelope at home. Okay, and he returns to Ithaca at the end of the story to find. He returns disguised as a beggar. Okay, so Athena grants him the ability to be disguised as a beggar. And when he returns, he finds that there are suitors waiting to marry Penelope and take Odysseus' throne. So Odysseus, he stays in Ithaca for a bit, traveled as a beggar, and he's pursuing all of these. He's walking around all these suitors, and these suitors are treating him like the beggar he is, because that's all he looks like, right? He's a fraud. Odysseus is a fraud in his own hometown. Okay. So there's a challenge that Penelope gives to all the suitors that says you must use the bow. You must use my husband's bow, and if you can string the bow, and you do something with it, I think you shoot the arrow somewhere. I will marry you. Okay, so that's the challenge that she gives to all the suitors, knowing that it's an impossible task because only Odysseus could string the bow. Okay. Long story short, if you've never read the Odyssey, Odysseus finally reveals himself. So he, as the beggar, goes and strings the bow, and he has the doors locked, and he strings the bow, reveals himself as Odysseus, and kills all of the suitors. So, why am I bringing this up? Should be pretty obvious to you at this point. But this entire D-list BSV thing is because of Craig Wright. Okay. You guys know who Craig Wright is? So if we go to Eric Voorhees' announcement when he said that they were going to delist BSV from Shapeshift, they stand with Binance and CZ Sentiment, so he doesn't actually specify the lawsuit. But CZ mentions the lawsuit in behavior. So I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Eric Voorhees knows exactly who Craig Wright is. I'm not kidding. So I mean that. So Eric Voorhees knows exactly who Craig Wright is. Okay? That's an inside tip from Conor Murray. Okay? Eric Voorhees knows exactly who Craig Wright is. So, if Eric Voorhees knows who Craig Wright is, why does he stand with Binance and CZ Sentiments to delist Bitcoin SV from Shapeshift? Anyone know? It's because Craig Wright as Satoshi Nakamoto threatens the business model of Shapeshift.com. It's very simple. So while Odysseus was gone, the suitors all lined up and they created cryptocurrencies and they ICO'd and they did all these. I'm a journalist, so I don't reveal sources. So I'm just telling you this. You can take this as a fact or not. You can ask him if you want. And because Eric Voorhees understands that if Bitcoin SV run by Satoshi Nakamoto were a thing, his entire business model is gone. Now, the ironic part of this is all of these companies. Do you really think these companies are stupid? So do you think Binance is stupid? Do you think Kraken is stupid? Do you think Roger Ver is stupid? Honestly, Do you think these guys are stupid? I think Peter McCormack might be stupid. But the ironic part is that Peter McCormack is acting like an idiot, and he's going to go into this lawsuit with Craig Wright. Okay? And if you go look at Calvin Ayre, I recommend you watch Calvin Ayre's most recent interview where he details why he backs Craig Wright. He goes on to say, he talks about, well, I knew some guy who knew Craig Wright, and Craig Wright created Bitcoin because it's in the gaming industry and blah, 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 blah. Okay. The reality is Satoshi Nakamoto was a team, most likely. I believe the three main people were Dave Kleiman, Craig Wright, and David Rees. Okay. And you're probably hearing one of those names for the first time. But David Rees, let me pull up his Wikipedia page because he has a Wikipedia page, was a mathematician that worked on Enigma. Okay, do you know what Enigma was? It was the project during World War II to crack the Nazi code. Okay. Before 1960, Rees and his family moved to the University of Exeter. Before 1971, Rees was appointed head of the mathematics department at the University of Exeter. Does the University of Exeter sound familiar? Well, I don't know. How about you just Google University of Exeter and Craig Wright? You can go from there. Okay. Next, you can also go through all of the documents because I don't think anyone has done this. Go through the documents of the current lawsuit between Dave Kleiman's brother Ira Kleiman and Craig Wright. Okay. We all get to invade Craig Wright's privacy, and we get to go find out everything we want to know. David Rees' name comes up multiple times, and if you go look at the you can find David Rees' name in a lot of places, actually, if you know where to look. Craig Wright bought intellectual property from David Rees way before 2013, when Rees died. Okay? This is all public. I guarantee. So I encourage you, go through these documents, look up David Rees' name. Okay? Look up the relationship between Dave Kleiman, David Rees, and Craig Wright. Okay? Just go into all of that. Okay. Specifically, I think if you look, David Rees solved the Merkle tree, solved problems related to the Merkle trees, and that's what it's mentioned in some of these documents. Okay. Now, Craig Wright's involvement with Bitcoin is obvious to anyone who pays attention. Now, what's unfortunate is that a lot of that when Craig Wright first was coming back, he said he wanted to kill off Satoshi. That's what he kept saying, right? He wanted to kill off Satoshi because he didn't want to be taken at his word just because he was Satoshi. He didn't want to be just an authority figure. Okay? Now, this is important for a couple of reasons, okay? Because everyone that is aligned with Bitcoin SV right now took that at its word, okay? I would count myself in that. I didn't really care about Satoshi, and I think this is the first time I've ever even on video said Craig Wright is Satoshi. Have danced around it, I'm sure. But the important thing is that when Craig Wright, what he wanted to do was have proof of work. He wanted to show you, well, look at what I know. Fact check me. And the biggest thing for me, as you probably all know since we talk about it a lot, is that Craig Wright was the first person to talk about the small world nature of the Bitcoin network. And we all just now accept that as a fact for some reason, even though Craig Wright was the one who told it to us. Craig was the first one to make it very public. Okay. Was there more people involved? Like Hal Finney. Yeah, Hal Finney probably helped code. He probably helped fix stuff. Craig Wright has said that, right? There's a lot of people who have said that. But again, I'm just mentioning. I think these three people were definitely involved. Okay, David Rees. The first time you're probably hearing about him for most of you. Okay, now there's a few stories that you need to be familiar with to understand why the cryptocurrency world is the way it is. So, The Grand Inquisitor is a poem within the novel The Brothers Karamazov. Okay, I'm actually not going to go through this, but I'll put a link here in the chat, and you guys can read it. You can read the actual story if you want. You can find it online. The Grand Inquisitor, you can see how Jesus was treated when he returns to the Catholic Church. Okay? Now, am I saying Craig Wright is Jesus? No. And of course, this is what idiots like Vin Armani then go on to say. They say, well, these guys are in a cult. They worship Satoshi. They worship Craig, whatever else. They're missing the entire point, right? Now, it's a way to understand the hero myth and how heroes are treated when the myth dies, okay? And that brings us to one more story. And I'm going to spoil this story, unfortunately, because I actually hate spoiling the story because it's my favorite story pretty much of all time. It's the story of Paul Atreides in Dune. So if you don't want to get Dune spoiled for you, you can tune out. All right. There's actually a great movie probably coming out. Probably going to be one of the best movies ever coming out. Andrew Villeneuve making it. But I'm going to spoil the story of Dune for you. I'm actually going to spoil the story of Dune all the way up to probably the 4th book. So if you don't want to hear it, turn it off now. But I think even if I spoil it for you, it's still interesting. So Paul Atreides, long story short, is a very long story short, I guess. So Paul Atreides is the protagonist of the story Dune, okay? And he becomes the hero of the story, all right? So that's all you need to know. He becomes the hero of the story. So the first book of Dune, Paul Atreides becomes a hero. He becomes a myth called Paul Muad'Dib. The name is Muad'Dib, and he is a superhuman, essentially, okay? Now, Paul Muad'Dib does a good thing in Dune. Does a great thing, right? But at the end of the story, he's able to see the future, and he sees that in the future, after he does the good thing that he's supposed to do, a very terrible thing happens in his name. Okay? Again, I'll keep the spoilers light, but something very terrible, he can see in his future that something terrible is going to happen in his name. And it does. So a lot of bad things are carried out in his name, in the name of Muad'Dib, because Muad'Dib is a myth to a bunch of people. Paul returns as the preacher. He returns as a blind, poor preacher to kill off the Muad'Dib myth. Again, I'm trying to keep the spoilers a little light. But the important thing is that in order for... I'll end it there. You guys can read. I don't want to spoil stuff. I hate spoiling stuff. But the important thing is that in order to kill the myth of himself, he had to disguise himself and come back and say the emperor has no clothes. Okay? Now, it's unfortunate that in Dune, that's not enough. In Dune, his son has to do what Paul couldn't do. And he has to take on a burden. But he takes on a burden to instill his golden path. Unfortunately, Craig Wright failed by trying to be the preacher. To be the preacher that returns from the desert and says, the Muad'Dib myth needs to die. He failed because no one listened to him. So now I think what Craig has to do is take on the role of Paul's son, Leto, and instill his golden path. Now, you can read what the golden path is. You can read about all that kind of stuff. But that's the reality of it is that's what's going on right now. So if you're wondering, well, all this stuff with the DLS BSV doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make a lot of sense, actually. It makes a lot of sense because Odysseus is back to kill the cryptocurrency world. Do you understand? This couldn't be more clear. And so all of the suitors are now scared. And the suitors are the ones who shilled the ICOs. They're the ones who have no business model but to facilitate the exchange between one crap currency to another crap cryptocurrency. The suitors are the ones who told you that Bitcoin can't succeed and that it can't scale. They're the ones who told you that a 6-block reorg matters. They're the ones that tell you that Bitcoin will fail. And they're the ones that tell you that Ethereum can do it better. And so what did Craig Wright do? Well, he's suing people. He decided that he's just going to, well, I think out of his hands, Ira Kleiman sued him. And that's a whole thing on its own. And I think now the truth is going to have to come out anyway, whether it's in court with Ira Kleiman, whether it's in court on his own terms. So I think what Craig Wright has decided to do is to go to court on his own terms. So he's decided to sue people like Peter McCormick, who do nothing but shill stupid currencies and, act like a child, essentially. He makes the space more childish, is what he does. I mean, what is this? ROFLF copter. I don't know. So that's really everything I wanted to get at here, believe it or not. There's not much else to cover in this aspect of why I named this Death at the Palace. But I'm gonna transition a little bit, okay? Because the delist BSV movement is futile. And there's a reason for that. Okay? Bitcoin SV Nchain. So what people are going to start learning very, very shortly is that there actually is like law is a real thing, right? So law exists. It's something you can't really get around, and it's just a thing that the world is governed by, and unfortunately the anarchist dream isn't going to play out anytime soon. And most importantly, Bitcoin isn't a tool to implement the anarchist dream. Okay, so that's the other piece of it, right? Because what's going to happen here is there's going to be something very, very shortly. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get up what I need to get up here. Roger doesn't like to hear this, Connor. I know. I like Roger Ver. It's just the problem. It's like Vitalik Buterin said. If Craig were Satoshi, it would lessen my opinion of Satoshi. Roger Ver echoed that sentiment. There's a guy I just saw. I wish I could see this here. Now, so what's going to be the new narrative, right? I think I can get it for you here if you give me 2 seconds. The new narrative is actually going to be something very straightforward. It's going to be, well, Craig Wright may be Satoshi, may have the keys, but doesn't make him Satoshi. Where can I not find this tweet? It's a very retweeted tweet. Adam Back, so good example of this. I meant to bring up Adam Back, of course. So Adam Back is another person getting sued. So Adam Back, Vitalik Buterin, whatever you pronounce his name. Did Adam Back delete the tweets? Wow. Adam Back deleted the tweet. Shocker. That's interesting. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Satoshi staying anonymous is a Bitcoin feature. If I had logs which narrowed the anonymity set towards Satoshi's identity, I would delete/shred them. That's interesting, isn't it? Why would Adam Back want to delete who Satoshi is? Anyone? Huh. And then there's the other one of, man, why can I not find this? This is frustrating. Anyway, the new narrative is going to be, and I'm calling it right now, I'm gonna be Vinstradamus, right? We're going to use that one. Vin says, by the way, Vin Armani says you don't get anything valuable out of this show. So, just so you know, I'm gonna be Vinstradamus, okay? And here's what is gonna happen. Craig Wright is gonna, in some capacity, prove that he holds the keys, or is he going to prove that he's Satoshi in whatever way? The narrative is then going to be, it doesn't matter who Satoshi is. It's going to be one of three things. Number one, it doesn't matter who Satoshi is, obviously, because Satoshi didn't know everything. It's going to be number two, well, Craig may have the keys, but he probably stole them from Dave or from anyone else, from Hal, right? He probably stole the keys, right? And then the very next thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, what Vitalik Buterin and Roger said, which is that, well, he may be Satoshi, but that just means that Satoshi was stupid, whatever else, all the other crap. I'm sorry, I'm a little disorganized because I just really want to find this tweet here, but I'm not going to find it, so I'm not going to waste your time finding it. Right? That'd be silly to waste your guys' time doing that. So the last thing I'm going to say is just that despite all of this, it's nice, right? So I actually talked to some people yesterday about Bitcoin SV, and I got to show them all the things that you can now do on Bitcoin SV. And despite everything that's been thrown at BSV, you can still use it. There is value because I can use my Bitcoin SV to do whatever I want. I can archive web pages forever on the blockchain. I can post to Bitstagram. I can post to Memo. I can add files to the blockchain. You guys understand this yet? So the value isn't determined by the delisting of Bitcoin SV or the listing of Bitcoin SV. It's not what determines value. That's what determines pump and dumps. That's what determines fake volume and fake trading and gambling, essentially. Okay? And yet, despite all what everyone is throwing at this, Bitcoin SV marches on. So I'm going to end this here very shortly. But what I hope you understood out of all this is that no matter what happened, if it was Craig Wright or it was Hal Finney or it was anyone else that you want Satoshi Nakamoto to be, this is how it's always going to play out. There's always going to be Odysseus returning. Okay? That's the way it has to work. It's the oldest story of all time. It's the oldest story that there is. The Grand Inquisitor, Death at the Palace, Dune. This isn't a new story. These are archetypes that manifest themselves with all heroes. And Dune is about destroying the hero myth. Okay? So I encourage you to read that. Any questions? I'll open up some questions, I guess. I got some time. But I'm going to end this. I'm done just making stuff an hour long because it needs to be an hour long. I'm doing this by myself now for the next foreseen future. So I'm not just going to make stuff an hour long. I'm also not just going to make stuff happen just because. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you to the person that just sent me this. I'm going to open up this tab here. So thank you very much. You know who you are who just sent this to me. For what it's worth, if CSW did actually sign a message or move coins with a Satoshi key, I would be much more inclined to believe he somehow stole, bought, or extorted the key than it proving anything about the Satoshi identity. Totally. A cryptographic signature is a necessary but insufficient part of a proof. To be honest, I wouldn't be satisfied with any evidence. So the ironic part is that Craig Wright is the one who's been telling you the entire time that a cryptographic signature means nothing. To be honest, I wouldn't be satisfied with any evidence. Okay. Fair enough. Why is Jack Dorsey... Well, why is Craig Wright not on Twitter still? You think Jack Dorsey is stupid? Do you guys all really think all of these people are stupid? Do you think they don't know who Craig Wright is? Honestly. Seriously. Do you think Roger Ver was fooled? Do you actually think Roger Ver was fooled? No. It's that Roger Ver's philosophies does not align with Craig Wright's philosophies. The Catholic Church's philosophies doesn't align with Jesus' philosophies in this story. Sorry, just for anyone listening, not watching this. Are you guys getting it now? Are you understanding? It's very straightforward. It's very short. Now, the whole world wants to. They don't want to believe that Craig Wright is Satoshi. They don't want to. They then take. I mean, I get it. I get not liking Craig. I think Craig's awesome. I mean, that's why I'm even talking about the guy. I think the guy's awesome. I think he's the most intelligent person in Bitcoin. I've learned more than my fair share of anything that he owes me from him. And he just wants you to learn about Bitcoin. And yet, that's the threat, that he wants you to learn about Bitcoin and to understand what Bitcoin always was and not what people want it to be. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Again, any questions? Any questions about all this? Otherwise, I'm going to sign this off here. And as I mentioned, from now on, we are going to go back to education because there's clearly a lot of it here. Specifically, here's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to try and... so Ryan Charles's videos with the Money Button series are actually really good. And it goes over basic things like transactions, signatures, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how much of that I need to redo, but some of it may be necessary to at least brush over, but I encourage everyone to watch them at least. I'm going to link to them and all that kind of stuff. And then what I'm going to start doing is actually going through what's immediately on the chopping block is nChain's patent 42. So I'm going to break that down, and we're going to try and understand what that's all about, why is it important, and what that enables on Bitcoin. Okay. Other than that, we're not going to... I am not going to make this show a drama show. This is the most drama I will stir up. That's not the point. This is not the purpose of Bitcoin, is to have these personalities all attacking each other and all that kind of stuff, which is what it's been made out to be. Okay. So as I mentioned, if you're watching this right now and you're like, oh, I want to watch this again, I saw a comment there. I will clarify. I'm not claiming I know who Satoshi Nakamoto was as a group. If you listen to our first interview we did with Craig a long time ago, he specifically talked about... thank you very much. I will post... he specifically talked about... so I've heard this multiple times. So actually, one of my favorite shows, South Park. Trey Parker writes all the episodes of South Park, but Trey and Matt are a team that makes South Park. But Trey Parker writes all the episodes. So, but he said specifically, he used the analogy when people ask him, well, who's the bigger part of the thing? He said, well, Van Halen isn't anything without David Lee Roth, right? David Lee Roth leaves Van Halen, and everyone's like, well, fuck that band, right? Craig Wright said a long time ago when we first interviewed him, he said, if one part of Satoshi dies, how can anyone be Satoshi? Right? I think that's how he feels. The problem is now is, well, if he did everything, then is it really right that Dave's brother gets to come in and take all of his stuff? I don't know. That's what the court's there to decide, right? Obviously, I'm not going to make any judgments there because I don't know anything about it. But the important thing that I'm trying to get across here is very simply that Dave trying to be precise here. the Satoshi Nakamoto myth has to die, but it doesn't mean that someone wasn't the person that built it. Does that make sense? So does Paul Muad'Dib accomplish everything he needs without the help of his advisors, without the help of Duncan Idaho? Does Leto Atreides accomplish everything he needs without Duncan Idaho? Does Odysseus accomplish what he needs without Athena? Without the people to board up the doors? You see what I'm getting at? So, anyway, thank you guys for listening. I'm going to end this here. Again, I'm going to make this unlisted on my channel. And then I'm going to upload it to Streamanity. And then I'm going to put the link on chain on a Bitcoin Files post. And then, or BitPaste post. And then if you pay 1 cent, you can watch the video. But I'm done letting people freeload our videos and get valuable information when they don't even use Bitcoin SV. So if you come into the Bitcoin SV ecosystem, you're going to get more valuable information. So that's what I'm going to start doing. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for listening. I'm going to end this stream now.